Hello, welcome to Overanalyzing Every Single Thing in Houseki no Kuni, because you don't want to spoil your friends who haven't watched it yet and you're in an exploding bubble of wanting to talk about it. Anyway, there's absolutely nothing different this time. And spoilers for up to 105, and if you notice anything that I don't, leave it in the comments, please. Now, this there's nothing different here than the previous iterations, except for the fact that something is different. But one thing I want to note that's different about the Japanese and the English translations of the manga, or at least just the book, that one, it's sparkly, so it's so much better. It's not really picking up on camera, but you know. But also the insides have the ends of the images of, or at least have cinnabar in them, which the English ones do not, and so that's where you get cinnabar. Because I was like, oh, you would have never known that if you didn't, but you don't. And the inside has the alternate versions of the cover, which I pointed out in the art book when I went through it, but I just didn't know why that art existed, and now I do. So it's cool that I didn't know that until I got the Japanese version. Anyway, moving on to the chapter that I lost. Oh, but it's right here. So we are on chapter 13, which is about the Amethyst Crystals. Nothing has changed since the previous ones. Totally nothing. First thing I want to say is this is the first time where, like, Foss is in the middle, the other ones are in the back. But since Foss getting their legs, you can see that they're now in a more even playing field, like, panel-wise, with the other gems. So even here, and sometimes they're even above. It shows them finally elevating themselves now that they have something that is, contributing to it. Like here, they're above, Congo's in the middle. And here they're saying humans, that's what this word is. And Congo's like, what? Give it a sigh. Well, that's all they can remember is what they say. And then, how that goes. So then they're gonna go pair up with the Amethyst is what this chapter is about. And this is Rutile and Yellow talking about how they're surprised that Congo like didn't get that mad, or that they're surprised he got so mad, and they believe he got so mad because Foss didn't remember anything and nothing about humans. So it just shows that humans is not a word that the gems know, and we know that Congo knows about it because of his reaction. And it just shows and it gives the audience a more deceptive feeling because we don't know why he's hid that information from them and that he knows. But anyway, then they're talking about how Foss has gotten faster with the legs, and Rutile's like, that's great for you, Foss, Um, and so, yeah, and then they meet the Amethysts. Uh, and this is I like the introduction they did for the Amethyst where they do this. And we have the broken table. I don't know if I have anything for this, but this is kind of interesting just with how it's vertical and the broken table. I guess that's just him remembering the humans. But another thing about it that I just thought about is that when we do get to finally meet Dr. Ayu, I don't remember her name that well. But like, Congo's creator, is that they're sitting by a table. So by him breaking the table, I guess I think that's kind of significant in that way, pulling back to that. Um, yeah, and so we see that like Foss is still lower in the panel here, but it's because Foss is actually running towards the gems, and then they're gonna pop back up, and then Foss pops back up and looks at Amethyst, and it makes like an emphasis on Foss's hair here. Um, and this is the Amethyst that doesn't go with Foss to the moon, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, because this is 84. Um, yep. And so, yeah. So then they save two people. They say that Foss will work better with them because it'll be a group of three and they act like one person. Um, and, yep. And so now Foss is excited that they're going to go into battle because, of course, they are. Like, this is the thing that they've been saying from the beginning that they've always wanted. The thing that they are now contributing. It's why the panels have gotten such difference since the other times where Foss has been lower. It's because Foss now feels like they can contribute. They can contribute to society. They now feel like a part. See, now Foss isn't in the low frames, they're in the middle because they feel like they can finally be a part of all the other gems. Like here too, Foss is in the middle between two gems, something they feel more connected with. And like, sorry, again here, in the middle. That's one thing I'm noticing with the paneling and layout of it. And I just love how the paneling just tells the story like that, especially with the symmetricality of a lot of the panels and how that changes later with Foss changing. Um, and so Foss feels like this is getting Foss closer to helping Cinnabar and putting Cinnabar in the group, which technically it is, but not the way that we thought it would go. But that's what Foss is thinking about. Foss is fighting for, Foss is continuing to better themselves for Cinnabar in order to help them, and they believe that they have to make these drastic changes in order to help Cinnabar, in order to be a part of the group, in order to do all this. It's really in contrast to Cinnabar, because Cinnabar doesn't really change that much physically, unlike Foss, like comparing the two. Foss feels like they have to change in order to be a part of the group, whereas their changing got them further away from the group, whereas with Cinnabar, them not changing, they eventually were able to do it, but it's just the fact of eventually, like when will eventually be, and that's why Foss is continuing on this tirade. And then they tell Foss about the meeting, the Amethyst Spring there, and see, again, if Foss's head is in line with the Amethyst, it shows that Foss is a part of them, or more involved with the group. And in fact, it even shows that with the double Amethyst, with Foss always being between the two of them, it shows that Foss is a part of something. And of course, as this goes on, Foss, I think the separation of the Amethysts just show how far and divided the story gets from the core group. I didn't think about that, but yeah, see, like, Foss is between them. It shows that Foss is a part of them. When Foss takes one of them away, it just further emphasizes the separation between the two groups that goes on later in the story. And we have Jade and they're strategizing, and they first bring up Bort and Daya, and it shows that they think of the strong. They think from strongest to weakest. I think what they showed. They said go Bort and Daya, the two diamonds. Then they go Yellow and Zircon, who has a diamond in it, and even though Zircon's new, like, it just shows that they value that. And then after that, Jade is like, "All right, Foss," and kind of like Amethyst, and "Oh yeah, Foss," and looks up at Congo, seeing that Congo, and it also shows that Congo wants Foss to be included, but they're cautious about it, because this is Foss. Congo knows that all of the gems want a purpose, and Foss finally gets this purpose, and that's why it goes to Foss here in between the Amethysts. Then they say they're going to go out for patrol, and we get to see the dynamic between the two Amethysts. And again, Foss is in between the two Amethysts in this panel too. Again, Foss is now lower. I think now that Foss sees that, like, they're not doing that much, Foss is like, oh, back to the lower panel. In fact, lying down again. Still in between them though, showing that Foss is a part of the place, but now is lowering themselves. I'm analyzing this way too much, but that is what this is. But I think it's interesting that, like, after Foss finally gets to go to battle, standing with them, then Foss seeing what actual their daily is like, oh, this isn't that cool. Like, kind of like their expectations weren't met, and now they're just wallowing on the ground. And it also shows with, like, the blanket, there's no expression on their face except for their eyebrows just being like, why? Like, this isn't anything they expected. They expected something cooler. They expected to contribute more. And then, the Amethyst, this is their daily for them, and everyone is just acting as they would, and Foss is completely like, there's nothing more than that, I think is what this is getting at. And Rutil is just asking, and Foss is like, I think this is just showing that it wasn't what Foss is expected, and Rutil is like, oh yeah, it's the same. And then they're talking about how they need to go up early. And you see how, like, this is an interesting panel, like, taken from the other side of the chair. Like, it kind of just shows, like, because it kind of looks like a cage, right? So it's kind of like Foss is, like, being caged in. And I guess that might symbolize just with how they feel like this is. This isn't what they thought it was. It's boring to them. And they feel like it's not progressing. Because they're realizing that what they see as more mundane might happen for as ever long, and they feel like they're trapped again, doing the same thing. Or at least, well, that's what I think that's implying. So here, now Foss is again lower in the frame, and the Amethysts are higher. And now Foss is no longer in between them, Foss is farther away. Again, here, Foss is farther away, still kind of in the middle of the frame in between. But it kind of just shows that after the mundaneness, they don't feel like apart again. Or they just don't feel like this is purposeful or what they thought it was. Because, of course, they're not going to be fighting every day, which is what Foss wanted, I guess. And it shows that Foss is so unmotivated to do anything besides fighting or what they see as valuable. They don't see picking berries for resources that they need as valuable. So they don't put a lot of emphasis in it. It also, I guess it shows that Foss doesn't understand what the community values, because Foss's view is so skewed with how cool fighting is that they think that that is the most valued thing, even though Rutile needs these berries and materials for other things. It's actually something that the encyclopedia book points out of how these resources are really important to them. I guess it also shows that with Foss taking up all the resin, because that would be needed. I think Foss doesn't have a good view of what is important in this society. And that skewed view leads them down their path, is because they see fighting as an importance, and then they see it as something that then they start to realize that it's not as cool as a job they thought it was, and they feel like they're not contributing as much as they would like to. And I think that goes into this realm of pointlessness that kind of comes with their expression on their faces, just because they don't see what's important in this society. They don't know what's important and important to them, you know? Then Foss talks about how they're tired. They're mentally exhausted at this point. Like, it could be a physical exhaustion too, but we know that Foss doesn't work that hard. But at this point they're mentally exhausted because I think they just realized that what they wanted isn't what they thought it was at this point. And they're so tired from that. That's at least why I think they're tired. The amethysts are fine. It could also be the legs, but I think they talked about how Foss's physical state is a reflection of Foss's mental state, and that's a huge thing with this series. Is Foss's mental state is reflected in them physically, and so them physically being tired, their legs physically not being able to move that well right now, is a sign that they mentally are having a hard time adjusting to this, and are having a hard time seeing that this is what they wanted. This is what it's like. This is what the daily life is like, and they're realizing that it's not as productive as they thought it would be. And so then the amethysts see each other and try to cheer each other up. I think this is 33, the one that goes with Foss to the Moon. I believe so. Yes. No, that's 84. Okay. But yeah, so they try to cheer Foss up to go to the moon. Not my brain. Anyway, they try to cheer Foss up, and Foss is like, "Oh, I want to be cool. I want to do the cool thing." And, because that's all Foss wants. The Foss wants to have the ideal job that they envisioned in their mind. They want that ideal thinking. They want what they think to match reality, even though that's not exactly what it is. So they're talking about how cool it is, how great it is, and then they're like, "Yeah, that's what I want to see." And then they're hit with the reality that it's not as exciting as they thought, because there's danger with that. With this ominous shot of the Lunarians and just the amethyst, we see how symmetrical it is. And now Foss isn't even in the frame with the amethyst. It shows how separate they are, and even here, like, they're not together. Like I was showing there before, how Foss was with the amethyst before, and now Foss is back on the ground. Foss is back to looking up to them. You can't even see their faces in this shot because Foss is looking up at them. And I guess I didn't even realize that the paneling is separating them more. As Foss gets more disconnected from the job, as they get more mentally tired, they start to put them back where they were, where they're lower than the other gems. And Foss is realizing that these legs aren't giving them what they wanted. These legs aren't enough to set them next to the gems or to stand by them. That's what Foss is seeing here. The amethysts try to pick them up. The amethysts are trying to raise Foss up. This looking down shot is the amethyst trying to perk Foss up and trying to look up there, and Foss is still trying to get there. But man, I didn't realize it. But the separation, Foss constantly falling down because they're mentally exhausted. And then, this symmetric shot, and you can barely see Foss in the frame here. It just shows that Foss isn't a player here, sadly. And then the amethysts are getting ready to fight a Lunarian, and they don't even look back at Foss. They're focused on their target at this point. Yeah. And now they're gonna, there's the amethysts, they're like, "Oh yeah, we'll show you how to do it." And then Foss, now it shows Foss in the action. But Foss is so distant from the amethyst, because we get to see the amethyst and Foss is up here. And it's just an ominous shot right here. And then about this little comic, just with Red Barrel trying to get, them to fashion. I find it interesting that, like, Red Barrel says that, like, Foss fashion's great, but they're like, "Oh, it's, like, too much," is basically what they are saying. Yeah, Sukiru. So So it's kind of interesting. But yeah. But someone I met recently said that Red Barrel is their favorite. Red Barrel is kind of funny, but I do like how all the side characters, the ones that aren't seen that much, get a little bit of personality in the side comics and stuff like that, or at least get seen. It's cute. Let's see. Do I have anything else about this chapter? Let me know in the comments if you have anything else. I think this really long shot of Cinnabar just shows how separated they are. Like, that's the thing, is Foss is in the school, Foss is holding a sword, they finally get to be with people. Foss being between the amethysts actually just shows them being included. Which I guess that's really cool visually with the two amethysts and how that works, whereas Cinnabar is all alone in the frame, in this huge frame of just being alone. Again, alone in this giant frame. And then Foss here is now at least incorporated with the amethysts. But later on, they feel less incorporated. Jade's hand in front of Foss here is a cool framing. Kind of showing that Jade has the power to take Foss where they want. Like, Jade is putting Foss in supposedly the, least likely spot for Lunarians. And Jade, I guess this kind of shows that, it could show, Jade being in opposition to what Foss wants, and Foss wants to fight Lunarians and stuff. But the Lunarians come, because we know later that it doesn't matter where the most likely spot for Lunarians to show up, they will always show up where Foss is, because they need to give more emotional damage to Foss. They need to inflict Foss with more emotional damage so that Foss becomes human. I love that aspect of the story so much, because it's actually lore related, why everything happens to the main character, because, they need an explanation like that for stories like this, where it's like, why does the action always happen here? Well, how come the characters are always trying to actively avoid the main character being in a dangerous situation, but it still happens? Because of this overarching plot of the Lunarians wanting to force Foss to become human. But we just think Foss is a part of the society and no one important at this point. And it's just so cool, lore-wise, why this can be explained. Why they put Foss with the least likely place for Lunarians to show up, and they still show up. Anyway, I feel like there's more with this chapter, but I think that's all I got. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I love this, Foss's thing about Cinnabar, but is rushed into the action, so, it forgets. It kind of just shows that, it's still on Foss's mind, but, the events of changing life, makes Foss think of something else. Even though this is the reason that Foss is doing it, but later Foss loses recollection of the reason they are doing what they're doing, the reason why they're changing so vastly. Anyway, it's great. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next volume. Yippee-dippy-doo. Thank you all for watching. Bye.